meet my fellow bookish witches. Welcome to Witchy Reads, a place where we talk about books and other bookish things. From the very beginning, horror has been viewed through the queer lens, a doorway into dealing with the fears, anxieties, and lives of the LGBTQIA+ community. Many of these horror stories are mirror reflections of the queer creators who made them, such as the bisexual queen mother of sci-fi gothic horror herself, Mary Shelley, or the closeted Bram Stoker, both creating two of the most iconic horror creations in literature and beyond. The sad truth was, many of these creators weren't free to outright express their true feelings, leaving only their stories as outlets to show their true selves. Horror stories allow readers to seek out queer identities hidden in plain sight. Maybe in a different light, you'll start to see Halloween as a coming out story. Through the right lens, perhaps The Exorcist is an allegory for conversion therapy.
The power of Christ compels you!
Regardless, it is easy to say that without those early contributions and reading between the lines of classic horror stories, the queer horror genre we know today wouldn't be the same. Queer horror, like many subgenres in horror, is subjective, as it can mean different things and elicit different emotions for different people. Some view it as a story that is set either in an exclusively queer narrative or follows exclusively self-identifying queer characters. A queer narrative is that which deals with an exclusively queer experience, a coming-of-age story that deals in accepting yourself, a coming-out story, or maybe something on the darker end of the spectrum, those dealing in stories of queer erasure. These stories' themes have a tendency to lean into tales of desire, atypical longing, humanity, and the sheer horror of trying to hide one's true self. She knew this feeling. She hadn't felt it in 5 years, but it was surfacing now, breaking through sedimentary layers, seeking the surface, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Come Out by Natalie C. Parker is a searingly dark and poignant young adult queer horror that I personally feel did a great job of giving an unflinchingly realistic view of queer identity wrapped up in a terrifying story. We are first introduced to two high school seniors, Fern and Jack. Neither move in the same social circles, with Fern being the very definition of a theater kid, while Jack is seemingly secure within the Christian kids demographic. This dynamic changes, however, when both attend the same house party and stumble unintentionally into the woods on the outskirts of town. Woods that both, for unknown reasons, fear going near, let alone into. After that moment, their lives instantly change when they suddenly begin to remember key aspects of who they are and identify as.
What if I really was someone else?
They also remembered that 5 years ago, they used to be friends. Not just friends, best friends, along with someone named Mallory, the troubled lesbian teen who disappeared 5 years ago. No one seems to know what happened to her, many assuming she was a runaway. Except Fern and Jack are beginning to remember what happened the night of Mallory's disappearance. They were with her, and they are worried that something much more sinister happened to her. Fern wants answers. Why did they forget crucial parts of who they are? Why don't they remember what happened to Mallory? Why is Fern beginning to feel like she doesn't belong in the body she was born into? Fern tries to get Jack to speak with her, but Jack has to be careful. With very religious parents at home, a boyfriend, and a judgmental friend group, these new feelings she is beginning to have about the new girl in town, Devin, not only have the potential to change every fundamental piece of her life, they can also be dangerous. When Jack continuously refuses to re-examine her old friendship with Fern, why this scary return of dark memories is happening, Fern decides to move on by accepting this new version of themselves. The part of them that is neither girl nor boy, but something else. Someone confident and self-assured in who they are. Someone who can stand up on stage and play the part of Danny Zuko in a gender-swapped production of Grease, opposite her newly developed crush, playing young Sally. The only obstacle they face is a mother who refuses to see them as anything but the doting feminine daughter because anything less would be seen as unacceptable. There's no easy way to say it. Fern's mom is basically a TERF. Every time she says something to reinforce that ideology, it made me cringe. Meanwhile, Jack is struggling with the flood of emotions and changes taking root in her. Things long thought dormant that refuse to stay silent any longer. It doesn't help that the spirit of Mallory appears to be haunting her, taunting her, trying to make her come back to the woods, to face what the three of them left behind that night 5 years ago.
Something's wrong. This isn't how life is supposed to feel. Tell me you know it's true.
The main draw of the horror genre by the queer community can really be centered at its ability to explore otherness, a state of being where many of those who label themselves as queer seek to find solace and acceptance. The story or characters don't need to be queer to evoke these feelings. It's the always hungry vampire, the transformative werewolf, the trapped demon, or other dark entity forced to hide in the shadows. A recent trend at pride parades is to be welcoming of horror creatures that they now view as gay icons, from the Babadook or even Pennywise the Clown. Part of the reason for this is to indulge in good camp fun that only the horror genre can provide. But there is also a deeper reason why the queer community relates more to these monsters. It is not from a place of self-hate, but from a place of strength. Horror seeks to disrupt the heteronormative harmony of the suburbs. Nothing showcases this more than the slasher horrors of the 80s and 90s. An unknown disguised dark entity stalking gated communities where sexed up teens believe themselves to be safe, raining terror down on their heteronormative way of life, waking them up to the fact that there are in fact true horrors in the world. I don't think it's a coincidence that this historically lines up with the post-Stonewall world and the demonization of queer and trans folks. Thankfully, in recent years, there seems to be a sort of shift in how these characters are seen and, more importantly, represented in horror. That's not to say the representation is 100% fixed. There are still some improvements that should absolutely be made, but the shift has been noticeable. Now we see stories where instead of the terror being queerness, it is actually the heteronormative. How being ostracized by our family, friends, or society is seen as the true horror. Or perhaps something as simple, yet terrifying, as a teenager coming into who they are without knowing what the outcome of that change might be. Come out, wherever you are, the patron's in the trees. Find his house, make a wish, he'll do just as you please. Come in, whoever you are, receive your patron's gift. The price is small, and with it all, you'll never be adrift. Come back, wherever you roam. Come see his deathly hue. Ask him nice. Don't ask twice. He'll fix what's wrong with you. Though Jack continues to struggle to find who she is, who she was 5 years ago, she can't help but find joy in the few moments she allows these new feelings to take over, even if all she has ever been told is that it is wrong. Then one night, she has a surge of longing to know who she truly is. While her parents plan to go out one evening, she texts them that she is planning to meet up with her boyfriend. Only that is a lie. She waits at the end of her street for Devin, who pulls up on her motorcycle. They share an intimate moment just as Jack's parents come back. The terror she feels in that moment supersedes any thought as to why her parents returned home early. It's not until she is in her room debating on if it is safe to text Devin that she is all right, that she sees the text she sent her parents earlier, which was supposed to say that she was meeting up with her boyfriend. Only that's not what it says. Instead, it says, "Mom, I need you to come home now." These words aren't Jack's, yet they stare back at her from her cell phone, clear as day. That reveal made my blood run cold. To have something take over your personhood, to lose all control and not even know it, it's an experience that I'm sure many queer folk can relate to. Rightly terrified and in a panic, Jack reaches back out to Fern, desperate for someone who understands what is happening. She tells her that she thinks Mallory is haunting her and that something evil is possessing her, making her do things she doesn't want to do, trying to change her back to the person who forgot who she was. What she doesn't know is that Fern is experiencing similar hauntings, but they don't believe them to be malicious, but a sign for them to embrace their queerness and come out to their crush as non-binary and bisexual. But when they try, something takes hold of them, takes hold of their voice, and the wrong words come out. Instead of coming out, they are metaphorically and physically kept firmly in the closet.
I tried and tried to claw my way out.
Fern panics as the realization of what they've done sinks in, and they lose their crush, their lead role in the play, and their new sense of self all over again. That's when they decide to team up with Jack to finally face what happened to Mallory that night 5 years ago, and the spirit that is bound and determined to prevent them from being who they are.
We're gonna need to harness the full potential of our shared powers.
All while these changes and hauntings have been happening to Fern and Jack, the story has also been slowly revealing flashbacks from the point of view of Mallory before the night she disappeared. How she met Fern and Jack, the friendship that formed from being the only ones they could talk to about coming to terms with their sexuality and gender identity. That is how we learn about the urban legend of the woods, about the spirit of the patron who lives there. Legend says that the patron will grant a wish to those who can locate his house in the woods, a house with a supposed history of taking in outcasts, providing them a normal life. Mallory, Fern, and Jack accidentally stumble across the patron's house and seek refuge there from their parents, religious guilt, and society as a whole, until Mallory and Jack are caught kissing by Mallory's parents. This sets off a chain of events that leads to Mallory's parents deciding to send her to conversion therapy. In a desperate attempt to escape that fate, Mallory decides it is time to ask for her wish from the patron. So she, Fern, and Jack meet up at the patron's house in the woods. The patron requires a sacrifice in order to grant a wish. Mallory is all too ready to give it, not realizing the sacrifice is her life, because the patron is not what the legends say. He didn't run a home to help those seen as outcasts. He ran a conversion camp where those who society deemed queer were sent to be changed, to forget who they were. When Mallory makes her sacrifice and is unalived by the patron, Fern and Jack are changed. They forget. Ever since that moment, the patron has been possessing them to keep them that way, forcing this bleak, heteronormative existence upon them both. In the present day, they have to return to the patron's house in the woods to end that possession and free Mallory's spirit from his grasp. With the help of Mallory's spirit, they manage to do just that. They return home as who they were always meant to be, queer and proud. Of course, the consequence is that Jack is kicked out of her home. Thankfully, she has a newfound village that supports her, one that even includes her ex-boyfriend, along with her new girlfriend. Fern's mother, while still needing to learn to accept Fern's new identity, is willing to put in the work, which was a relief to see. The reality of the ending is that Mallory is still dead and gone, a reminder of what the queer community is willing to risk for even a small piece of the same freedoms everyone else has.
And then I was clawing my way up out of the ground. And then I was at the surface, gasping for air, rain pouring down on me.
I can't think of anything that dives into the fears and anxieties the way a story like this does. Words such as straight, cisgender, heteronormative, and purity easily describe the vast majority of the horror genre. It's why queer horror stories such as Come Out are so important. A majority of the story is that of a queer coming of age tale, which a lot of readers seem to take issue with. They wanted more horror, but fail to realize it is exactly the coming of age tale that heightens the horror within the story. Having a secret self is like trying to cage a monster that wants to break free. Members of the queer community who have experienced that need to see that represented as a horror, because it is. Using one's sexual history can also be damaging, placing limitations and causing untold anxieties for which there is no antidote. While this might not seem scary, it absolutely can be portrayed as such in a queer horror. Then there is the darkest fear of the LGBTQIA community, one that has been prevalent in the horror genre for a long time, that of the death of the queer to make way for the hetero.
I'm dying right now!
Mallory died to make way for Fern and Jack living a heteronormative lifestyle against their will. This is the true horror of Come Out, Come Out. I can see why some might be disappointed that the book seemingly shifted from horror to a coming-of-age tale. I also think what some readers forgot is that this is a young adult novel, so if you expect body horror or gore or intense jump scares, you're just not going to get that from this novel. However, if you have ever felt like you have lost yourself or that you can't be who you know you truly are, that is a fear and anxiety that builds as you read this book. I know I felt it when that reveal came that Jack and Fern were not in control of what they were doing or saying. I was left speechless. I related to each of the characters and the obstacles they had to overcome, not just defeating the big bad evil guy, everything else that fights back against the queer community. I particularly related to the character of Fern, their euphoria when they begin to let in the person they lost 5 years ago. It was wonderful, which is why when everything goes wrong, it quickly became so terrifying. This book was exactly what I expected and gave me the fear and anxiety I think it was meant to. I'm giving Come Out, Come Out 4.75 stars. The writing, narrative, and characters were extremely well done. I think the horror was perfectly set up for the age range this is targeting, and I think showing these fears through queer horror is vitally important. I would definitely recommend this book if you are looking for an easily digestible yet poignant queer horror. Just remember, it is young adult though. This was such a great horror read and a phenomenal queer horror story. I wish more of my reading experiences could be like this one. If you are interested in learning more about the history of queerness in horror, I would also recommend It Came From the Closet: Queer Reflections on Horror, essays compiled by Joe Valise. It is a great interior view of how horror has always been viewed through a queer lens. You might be surprised to learn that a lot more horror stories have a queer narrative than you might think. I would love to know anyone else's experiences with queer horror. It's quickly becoming one of my favorite genres. So if you have any stories or recommendations, please leave them in the comments below. I would love to add more of this genre to my TBR. If you enjoy my videos and would like to support my channel, the best way to do that right now is to like this video, subscribe to my channel, or share any videos that you particularly like. It really is a huge help, and I greatly appreciate it. Until our next chapter together, merry part and blessed be.